Hi, my name is Grant Kramer and I'm a professor emeritus at the University of Nevada, Reno. Today we will continue and finish my season 3 episode 14 of My Backyard Vineyard. Welcome to my vineyard. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we'll summarize the season. We'll start with how the weather was and then discuss some of the maintenance that was done in the vineyard. We'll then look at the growth and development of the vines over the course of the season. We'll look at some of the nutrient problems that we were having, and we'll discuss insects and disease problems. We'll analyze the harvest and the winemaking practices. Finally, I will make a critical assessment of the season and discuss changes that will need to be made next year. Let's start by taking a look at the weather last season. It's March 2024, and we've had a long, wet winter. So it's a sunny day this March 22nd, and I'm spraying sulfur today, but the reason for it is because our climate has been cool. It's the spring. The climate conditions are good here right now for powdery mildew growth, and we have a coastal marine layer, quite a bit of fog this morning. All of those conditions are going to contribute to the initiation of powdery mildew. In the left-hand figure here, you can see that temperatures were about average, slightly warmer in the summer months. The green line is the average maximum temperature, and the red line with red dots is the data for 2024 through October. The actual numbers are on the left y-axis. It was very wet in the spring with more than twice the amount of rainfall in February. However, after the spring, the rest of the year was completely dry. The blue bars represent average precipitation, and the orange bars are the precipitation for 2024 through October. The numbers are on the right y-axis. On the right-hand side of this image, you can see a plot. The magenta line in this plot represents the average cloud cover in the last 4 years in my area. It ranges between 30 and 60%, with May and June being the cloudiest months. The purple bars represent the cloud cover for this year, which was exceptionally cloudy, particularly in February, May, June, September, and October. Let's move on to maintenance. There were 4 major maintenance tasks this year. These were mowing the grass between the vines with my new battery-operated power mower, pruning the vines into the shape of a goblet, tip removal to keep the vines from tangling and to stay compact and airy, and weekly Brix measurements to determine berry ripeness near the end of the season. Just a little bit of a drop there. That's all I need to do, and I press read, and the value is instantaneous. And I got an average of 18.8. The irrigation system was modified to provide sprinklers below the vines and keep the leaves dry, but be able to apply more water to the lawn and the vines. This helped to prevent powdery mildew formation, but keep the grass covering the soil and reducing the dust. Let's look at the growth of the vines over the course of the season. Overall, the growth was good, especially in the beginning of the season, but nutrient deficiencies persisted, which I will get to in a moment. All of the vines are significantly larger than last year. As an example, let's look at the right and left vineyards in the middle of the month of May in 2023 and 2024. You can see that the vines in year 2024 are much larger with a lot more vigor. Now let's look at the development of the vineyard over the course of the season. The vines remain dormant in early spring. The vines were pruned in the middle of March when bud break occurred. Shoot elongation is very rapid during this time of the spring. The vines continue to develop through the middle of May, with blooms starting at this time. A few vines start showing nutrient deficiency symptoms at the beginning of June, and these symptoms progress into July. Veraison was highly variable but started around the middle of July. The berries continue to develop their color, but the nutrient deficiency symptoms continue to increase in the leaves. The grapes were harvested on August 23rd. After that, the vines continued to grow for a few weeks before the vines start the process of shutting down and going into dormancy. Let's look at 4 examples that we have been following through the years. These vines have been progressing nicely. These vines were all at different developmental stages after the first year due to different levels of vigor when they arrived from the nursery in year 1. Let's see how they are developing. We will start with R31 after pruning in the spring of year 3. Vine R31 had moderate growth and was pruned at the top to 2 spurs. It is progressing nicely. Vine 42 had a crooked trunk and was pruned back low to grow up the vine to form a new straight trunk in year 2. It was pruned to 2 spurs, and you can see its development is behind vine 31 just a little bit. Vine R64 was the most developed vine in the vineyard and was pruned to 4 spurs. You can begin to see the formation of a goblet shape by the end of this season, which is my goal for all of these vines. Vine L51 was a broken vine that I thought I was going to lose, but it has come back stronger after reattachment and some tender, loving care. Needless to say, I continued to have nutrient problems in year 3. Soil and petiole mineral nutrient analysis were performed again this year, and results were similar to the year before. Let's talk about the nutrients individually that continue to be problems. When did they show up and how were they dealt with? One of the first steps of the season was to do a soil analysis. The results came back indicating that my soil pH had increased a little bit to pH 7.4. This is soil coming from the basins, which I had acidified previously with elemental sulfur to lower the pH and increase mineral nutrient availability to my plants. My roots are well spread out in between the basins as well, which has not been treated with sulfur. So my first task was to add more sulfur to the soil to continue lowering the pH and increasing nutrient availability. My soil analysis also showed that nitrogen, potassium, and boron were still low even after fertilization last year. So last year, the potassium deficiency was quite significant. So this year, I got ahead of it and fertilized early with potassium sulfate. I am pleased to say that this alleviated the problem and I did not have any potassium deficiencies this year, which was also confirmed by the petiole analysis. I knew that boron deficiency would be a problem because of the results from the previous year, but I was still worried about over-fertilizing with boron and causing boron toxicity. So I went conservative, and when applying the sulfur, also watered in a low concentration of boron into the soil, as I had done the year before, early before flowering. Unfortunately, this was not enough. Flowering and fruit set are very sensitive to boron deficiency, and this was the case this year. Petiole analysis confirmed that my boron concentrations were low, so I immediately applied a solid boron fertilizer to all of the soil. See my earlier video on this for more details. We shall see if this did the trick next year. This was by far the most impactful nutrient deficiency I had this year, as it had a major impact on fruit set and fruit yields. Notably, vine growth inhibition as seen in the previous year was alleviated this year. Nitrogen was low as usual, but it was recommended to not add nitrogen fertilizer until after bloom. This was when I applied it. A second application was necessary later in the season as some of the older leaves started to show chlorosis, which is an indicator of nitrogen deficiency. Petiole analysis indicated that iron was deficient, so iron EDDHA foliar sprays were applied several times throughout the season. At first, I was not concerned about the magnesium concentrations, as the magnesium concentrations seemed sufficient in the soil. However, petiole analysis indicated that magnesium concentrations were deficient in the leaves. But deficiency symptoms didn't show up in the leaves until after fruit set. I expect the increased demand for nutrients by the berry clusters induced these symptoms. Magnesium sulfate foliar sprays were applied every couple of weeks. Color improved in the new leaves, becoming darker green, but the older leaves never fully recovered. There was some greening, but the leaves remained chlorotic. I only identified 2 insect pests this year, and that was a grasshopper and a couple of katydids, which were found munching on some leaves. They were captured and no further damage occurred. No insecticide sprays were used, and the damage was very minor. Powdery mildew did not appear this year. I attribute this to good management with sulfur sprays and the shaping of open, airy canopies to prevent powdery mildew growth despite it being a very wet spring. The harvest was small and variable as expected for a first harvest. This was enough to make 5 gallons of wine. I hope to make 30 gallons when the vines reach full production potential in the 6th year. The variability of the grapes was largely due to the variable development of the vines and the mineral deficiencies. As it turned out, the quality of the grapes harvested was very good despite this variability, and I was able to reach my Brix and titratable acidity objectives. For a first run, the harvest and winemaking went very well. The wine is developing nicely as it settles and ages. I couldn't be more pleased. The aromas so far are floral and fruity. The color is light. Now let's make a critical final assessment of the season and discuss changes that will need to be made next year. It's very clear that I started out with poor quality soil, and this is a source of my nutritional problems. If I was a professional grape grower or winemaker, then these soils would be unsuitable. However, this is the hand I was dealt with when I bought this house, so I'm going to make it work. I enjoy a challenge. I am confident with time that I will get a handle on these nutrient problems. One has to have a little bit of patience, a little bit of experience, and collect good data and take good notes. The biggest problem I had this year was the boron deficiency. Hopefully, I've taken care of that with the treatment of Granubor, a solid boron fertilizer at the recommended rates. However, as a precaution next year, I'm going to give them a foliar boron spray to hopefully protect them before flowering and get a good fruit set. Let's see how that goes next year. I had no problems with powdery mildew, no insects to speak of, and no bird threats, so I didn't need to net my vines this year. That doesn't mean I won't have to in the future as the birds discover that there are grapes in the local area. At any rate, I'm very happy with my disease and pest management strategies, and I don't see any need for changing my current practices. Finally, I'm very happy with the way the winemaking went this year. I feel like I made a good rosé and I had all the equipment. Things went smoothly. If I was to do something differently, I would do the fermentation at a cooler temperature and I would leave the skins on the juice for at least a couple of hours to get more extraction of the fruit aromas, the fruit color, and the fruit flavors. In the future, I plan to make a full-bodied red Pinot Noir. To do that, I'm going to need a crusher destemmer, which I don't have currently. So I'm either going to have to borrow one or get someone to help me at a winery. I have a friend that's offered. So overall, the season was a huge success. Cheers! Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, then please like it on my YouTube channel And consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, where we'll have more videos in the future for season 4, maybe even season 5, so we can see how the vineyard develops. Also, I have videos on winemaking and on plant physiology if you're interested. Have a great day.